I hope you. Thank you, Patrick. Patrick is our tech team behind the scenes. Thank you for the recording. Welcome to the first USAF Helm Engage of 2024. The topic we are exploring today is advancing early career researchers and scholars. We're privileged to have with us Professor Stephanie Burton and Professor Kolawole Samuel Adeyemo with us today, talking about advancing early career researchers and scholars. We're also talking about the barriers and enablers for early researchers, for early career researchers and scholars, and how we can embolden the pipeline for this emerging group that is so essential for higher education success. Supporting emerging researchers and scholars is of paramount importance if we want to grow the impact of higher education in our national and continental development agenda. Support is, of course, not value-free. So our thinking is about who we support and advance and how we do that. And that's essential for providing relevant, equitable, and fair support. Especially the COVID-19 crisis showed us how some of us are carrying much more load than others. And thus our support needs to be attuned to the unique contexts of the scholars and researchers we want to support. In addition, we must consider context. We don't support in a vacuum. So our discussion today can also include discussions of contextual factors that enable, promote, and advance emerging scholars and researchers. Here we may want to think about funding models, steering mechanisms, and the overall research ecosystem into which early career scholars are embedded and how it enables or hinders their advancement. I'm Birgit Schreiber, and I'm hosting and moderating the Engage webinar series, the National Engage webinar series for USAF Helm. And today is our first, as I said, for the year. In terms of the flow today, please note that the webinar is recorded, that you will get access to the recording afterwards, and that we will also share the PowerPoint of Professor Burton with you afterwards. Please put your names in as best you can. Sometimes it's tricky because we log on via other devices. Towards the end of today's session, close to 3 o'clock, we will ask that you give us a quick evaluation. The link will be shared with you in chat. Please also note any comments or questions in chat that you may have. We will pick up on these during our Q&A at the end of the discussion. A quick thank you to Michelle Buchler, who's in the audience with us. Michelle Buchler is in the USAF Helm office, who enables a lot of the background administrative stuff and is largely holding the Helm office together. Michelle, a special shout out to you today. Also, a quick greeting to my favorites in the group is Maria, Maureen, Hanley, and Henry. So I saw you arriving and I'm very excited that you're here. Let me introduce our esteemed speakers today. First, we have Professor Stephanie Burton, who's a professor in biochemistry in the Faculty of Natural and Agricultural Sciences and a faculty fellow at Future Africa at the University of Pretoria. She's the former vice principal for research and postgraduate education at the University of Pretoria. Professor Burton is the interim president of the Academy of Science of South Africa, immediate past president and fellow of the Royal Society of South Africa, and a research fellow for University South Africa, and a member of the Governing Council of Future Earth, and the co-chair on the board of the International Academy Partnership. Professor Burton is currently leading and coordinating several national projects on mentoring and capacity development for early career academics. And she's also on the USAF Community of Practice on postgraduate education and scholarship. And of course, leading the Advancing Early Career Research and Scholars Program. And she will share with that, about that today with us. We're honored to have you with us today. Our second speaker and respondent is Professor Kolawole Samuel Adeyemo, who's an associate professor and director of the Center for the Advancement of Sustainable Higher Education Futures, newly established center at the Education Faculty at the University of Pretoria. He has an excellent record of research and scholarly publications in international and comparative studies in higher education, and he's an NRF-rated researcher. Professor Adeyemo is the South Africa Country Director for the Society of Transnational Academic Research, which is the STAR Scholar Network, and has consulted for governments on different projects related to policy analysis, British Council, DARD, the National Institute for Humanities and Social Sciences, and the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Study, amongst others. Prof. Adeyemo, we're very excited to have you with us too. But first, Prof. Burton, if we can, let me switch over. If I can ask the tech team to spotlight Professor Burton, and then we'll have about 25 minutes or 20 minutes or so. Then we will switch over to Prof. Kola, and then we will have some time for Q&A. Let me see if Patrick can spotlight. There we are. Thank you very much, Prof. Over to you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to see so many people on this meeting this afternoon, and I'd like to say thank you very much to Helm for giving us an opportunity to tell you about some projects that I have been coordinating on behalf of Universities South Africa. I'm going to give you a presentation which is just really background, and I'll be happy to answer questions about it. But knowing who is likely to be in this audience, I think this is a great opportunity to tell you about some of the new opportunities that we've been developing for early career academics. So with that, I'm going to share my slide, find out where I can do it. There we go. Share my screen. Oh, okay, so somebody is going to have to enable me to allow me to share my screen.
You are co-host.
Okay. It says I'm not, but I'll try. No, it says the host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. Right. So this is I hope going to come up. There we go. I presume that looks like a shared screen now.
Perfect. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. This is really information about these programs, and I'm going to go relatively quickly through it. I'll be happy to answer some questions afterwards. So the Advancing Early Career Research and Scholarship Program. This is a program which has been sponsored and funded by the Department of Science and Innovation, and it's hosted by Universities South Africa. And if you want to find anything more about it, you will find the information on the Universities South Africa webpage. It's a program which is operated by a team. We have a project researcher, project manager, communications officer, and of course, USAF project manager. So we as a small team have been working together to launch several aspects of this program. And it originated from this. Originally, at the time when the department was called Science and Technology in about 2020, a study was conducted on how we might develop the academic community in higher education in South Africa. And there was also a ministerial task team report on the progression of Black South African academics. The outcome of those was a request from the DST to produce some suggestions to implement the outcomes of the recommendations that came out of those reports. And that's where this project started. In 2021, we provided the DST with an implementation program, and that was the result of a lot of discussions and a great deal of mapping of what we thought was the situation at the time and what we could do to remedy that. So we took the opportunity to map by discussing with all of the universities what they had in place by way of support and capacity building programs for emerging academics, and what interventions they were putting in place and where they saw that there might be gaps. So we talked to all the universities, we did the survey, we documented and mapped all the national programs and institutional programs. We discussed with the USAF Research and Innovation Strategy Group and with departments, DSI, DHET, with NRF, with HELM at the time also. And having identified those gaps and needs, we proposed the implementation plan for those interventions. The gaps and needs came out like this. The main areas of concern were around training of supervisors and capacity to supervise, of the fact that many institutions felt that they didn't have sufficient supervision capacity, but they also didn't have institutional capacity to train supervisors. And there was concern about the stress and the burden of supervision on supervisors. There was also a lot of concern around the guidance that early career academics would need and the mentoring that would be useful. And again, issues came up around institutional culture and power dynamics, about internal mentorship programs, and the need to address that. And then again, out of the discussion came the ideas around how do you know when your interventions are working or not, and the fact that we didn't actually have a good monitoring and evaluation system which would allow institutions to determine the effectiveness of their support interventions. So starting from that, we proposed 4 programs, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about each of these as we go today. The first was what we first started calling a national toolbox of all of the resources that we actually have between us that we could share, where we could collaborate to provide a support database, a resource database for early career academics. We also identified the need for a nationally coordinated mentorship program, a strategy group of some sort on postgraduate education, and then a way of monitoring, as I've said. So these are the 4 interventions that we now have in place. Let me tell you first about the community of practice, which is, there's this lovely logo, but a community of practice for postgraduate education and scholarship. And this is a community of practice which is open to everybody in the sector. It focuses on postgraduate education and supervision particularly. And the whole idea is that this is a place where anybody who is connected or wishes to know more about postgraduate education can join. It's open, membership is open. We have a very extensive mailing list, which allows us to communicate with people across the whole sector, including senior academics, people who are in administrative and managerial positions, and postdocs and some postgraduate students also join us. And the discussion is around how we can focus on postgraduate supervision to improve it. So we share knowledge, we discuss benchmarks and practices, and we hope to help with the development of institutional capacity for supervision and training of postgraduates. Most recently, we had a webinar discussion around assessing of higher degrees. Many of you will know that there was recently a national review of doctoral qualifications, and I was one of the authors of that report. And that also has shed quite a lot of light on where the needs and gaps are. So this community of practice is a forum for what we can do in terms of that kind of challenge. So we are a think tank. We lobby, of course, for matters which relate to postgraduate education. We are nationally open to discussion and can make recommendations. We're connected with the national departments and organizations, and we can facilitate collaboration. That community of practice is very active. We've been established for 2.5 years now, and we have regular meetings and really quite significant membership. The focus areas are, as I've said, on things like doctorousness and advocacy and coordination. And this year, the topics we've been discussing have been research integrity and ethics, student mobility, funding, which is always an issue and a standing item, supervision, mentorship, and assessment, as I have said. So we talk every few months, a couple of months, on one of these topics. We also earlier this year had a colloquium, which we did in collaboration with a DHET-funded project involving Rhodes University, and where we talked about enabling quality in postgraduate education. And that was also very well received, well attended, and shed some interesting light on the way in which we could be working together more effectively. Let me move on, though, to two platforms which we have established through USAF, which I think will be of interest to this audience in particular. So TUSO Connect, I'm going to talk about each of these in a moment. TUSO Connect is an online platform to facilitate mentoring partnerships, and TUSO Resources is that national toolbox. They're both platforms which are well established now, and we have a communication plan which is ongoing. And maybe you have seen on some of the social media some of our announcements and features that look like the two at the bottom here. Here's a couple of others. The idea with those, of course, is to communicate to people that these platforms are available. So let me just tell you a little about each of them. TUSO Resources, then, I'm going to swap screens quickly and show you what TUSO Resources looks like. There we go. It takes a second. Right. So this is, if you go onto the USAF webpage, you will find a lead which takes you to TUSO Resources, and this is what you will find.
Stephanie, I'm just wondering if you can go, I think you need to stop share and then go share the next one, because we're back on your PowerPoint.
I don't know. I don't think that that's going to work. You see it now?
No. There we are. Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. All right, so this is what TUSO Resources looks like. Anybody can go onto it, and of course, early career academics might not really know exactly what they're looking for, but you will find in each of these sections information which will guide some aspect of developing an academic career. So, for example, if you're looking for research publishing, you click on this, you will find a number of articles which talk about publishing. You click on any one of those, you will have a lead into what that article is. It tells you where it comes from, who wrote it, who owns it, and of course you can read the whole article if you go to the read more. You can also use the keywords which are on the right-hand side, which will enable you to search for anything that which catches your eye, if you like. But you can also, by just scrolling down on this page, find some testimonials as to the usefulness of the platform, but also early career academics can log in. They can join TUSO Resources and then communicate with us, or they can look for a particular, by searching for a particular aspect of what they're looking at. And it links also to a number of other resources which are available, all of them on this website. So that's TUSO Resources, and we have found that it is very much, I'm going to stop sharing that one and go back to this one. We've found that there is, go. A great deal of usage of this website. I'm waiting for it to turn to the, no. Apologies, I had this working beautifully this morning.
No worries.
No, I have no idea why it's not doing it now.
No, you just go back to share slideshow and then back to your slide that you were busy with. That's it. No. Now just scroll down to the slide you were busy on. It was 9 or something.
Yeah, but it's not in presentation mode, is it?
No, but you can just go into slideshow in your cursor at the top, further up, on the right. That's it. Yeah. Start from the current slide, the second from the left. That's it.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Good. Sorry, that didn't happen to me this morning when I was doing this. Okay, so that's TUSO resources, and I hope that people will have a look at it and you'll find just how much useful information there is there. Just to say that there is an invitation to anybody who has open access resources and would like to share them on that platform. We'd be happy to take a look at them, and if they fit, we'll put them in and acknowledge your contribution, and if necessary, we can establish a memorandum of agreement around protecting intellectual property or copyright. This platform has a huge following. There are about 1,000 people who visited it in the last month or so. So it's obviously answering a need. And people who go to this website are not all only South Africans, but from several other countries as well. Moving on to TUSO Connect. TUSO Connect is the online mentoring program. And now I would really like to show you, and I'm not going to try, I'll show you something else in a moment. TUSO Connect is the website that we've established, which matches mentors and mentees. There is the link there, but this is what you find if you go to it. You are invited to set up a profile, and you indicate there if you are going to be a mentee or a mentor. In other words, are you searching for mentoring or are you offering to provide mentoring? And there's a series of questions which kind of analyze your interests and your discipline and your personality and so on. And then an algorithm that matches people so that the professional kind of partnership can be set up. There are also a number of guidelines. There's a set of guides for how to get started with the relationship and how to continue, how to set milestones. And there's a number of guides for how to manage starting a mentoring relationship. It's very useful, it's very comprehensive, and I think it's very well set up. Now, as far as we know, this is unique and it's not something that is common in other countries. And our focus is for our academics and researchers in our country to have this opportunity. So we're focusing on the higher education sector, particularly, of course, and trying to encourage mentors and mentees to register. Now, we have a very nice little video. I wonder if whoever else has got their microphone on could switch it off, because we're getting a bit of background noise. There's a little video which I'm going to try once to show you. I hope that it will work. And I'm not confident that it will, but I'll try. Are you seeing that?
No, not the video. I'm trying to, no.
Right. So this...
We're only seeing the slide with TUSO Connect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you seeing? No.
Video will be in your browser, Prof. So you will have to share again and share the browser.
Sorry. It doesn't work nicely. So no, I can't stop it at all.
trying to see that others mute their microphones. Let me see who's on.
I'm going to have to stop this here. There we go. Apologies, my system obviously isn't talking well to the Helm system. But what that video is, and I will share it so that maybe it can be shared with the audience afterwards. That video shows the benefits, not of mentorship for mentees, but of being a mentor for the mentors themselves. And I think that that's something that we don't think about very often. We don't consider how it can be particularly useful for mentors to provide that role and to be involved in a mentoring program. So I hope that those in this audience will consider that. Take a look at the TUSO Connect platform, and we will put that video in there, which explains in detail the benefits of being a mentor. Okay, just moving on from that to say that at the moment, we are in the middle of our communication program. We are going to have some events to showcase these platforms using relationships with societies such as the Academy of Sciences and the South African Young Academy. And we will be running some regional workshops where we hope to be in person-to-person contact with early career academics and to provide them with opportunities to get to know each other and to build their networks and contacts, and we can then receive some feedback. Somebody this morning coined the phrase the TUSO community, and I think that that's a very good way of expressing what we're trying to develop at the moment, which is a community of people involved in advancing the careers of early academics. The last thing I want to just mention is the monitoring and evaluation aspect of all of this. I mentioned earlier that when we did the original needs and gaps analysis, one of the things that we didn't have was a system for monitoring and evaluating any of these support interventions. Since then, 3 years ago, some of you may know that through the university's capacity development program, which is funded by the DHET, and all the universities have projects and programs in it. But in the last few years, there has been a monitoring and evaluation system which has been developed for the whole UCDP. It's a very complex, huge database, and it's a required reporting system for the DHET. And we've had a look at that and established that we now know that most universities who are using that have at least some capacity to collect the data for their support interventions. But what we're planning is something a little different. TUSO Monitor is going to be a framework, and it'll cover currently available systems and interventions, but we're hoping that we'll be able to map the whole system and find out what are the measures that actually enable success. And what are the pathways that help academics, early career academics as individuals, that help institutions, and that help the whole sector. So our framework will involve a more qualitative approach. We will be providing a tool for the universities to use, but it will be more of a reflective kind of survey type tool than a strictly statistical analysis of how impactful a support intervention can be. So we're going to start with this right now, revisiting the interventions that the universities are now using, and have a look again to see where there might be gaps and needs to get the whole picture. And then we will be able to say what interventions are there, which early career academics are in the system, and then we will need some feedback from all of the universities to find out how their systems are working and how we might develop a tool which everybody can use. It will be online, open access again, available for any institution or any individual to use to evaluate the impact of one of the support interventions that they know of or that they are using. So, colleagues, that was a very brief run-through of TUSO Monitor, TUSO Resources, and TUSO Connect. And the invitation is for members of our South African higher education group, the whole community, to join us to offer their support, their participation, contributions of resources, and we can then, using all of that, develop a more effective way of developing our academic community and supporting our early career researchers. So that's, this is my last slide. The website is there. This presentation is an invitation to you to participate and contribute. And I hope that you will find when you take a look at those platforms that there is value for you in one or many aspects of all of that. So thank you very much. I'll be happy to answer any questions. And should anybody want to contact me, that's my email address at the bottom of this slide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. We didn't see the last slides. I think that we didn't. I'm just seeing the messages coming through. So we didn't see the last few slides, but we will share them.
Can we go back? Yeah, you'll share them. They didn't have anything that I haven't said.
But particularly your email, and I think that people can
sure.
But that's not a problem. You don't need to share in chat. All people who registered for the webinar get the resources tomorrow automatically. We thank them and we send a link.
I will send them, yes. Yeah.
Thank you very, very much. That was very informative, and particularly for our emerging researchers and supervisors to know that this kind of research is available, this kind of support is available. So thank you very, very much. Prof, I can ask you to stay with us for in case there are questions right there. We're now going to spotlight Prof. Adeyemo.
Now we can talk. Oh,
And I'm going to ask all incoming people to mute themselves. They set on mute when they come in, but I see some of them just mute themselves halfway through the process. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Prof. Bickett, for the invitation. Essentially, I want to also thank Professor Burson for the presentations. I think you have highlighted important areas and how early career academic can be supported in South Africa, especially the platform that you share. My speech or presentation we cut across, firstly, I mean, a number of things that you've mentioned in your presentations, and I also want to share a number of things really very quickly in about 10 minutes or 15 minutes or so. This type of webinar is really important, and it's helping us to look into the future. By that, I mean we all know the funding for our education is declining, and the professors are retiring. I mean, top academics are retiring, so they need to be replaced. And the academics that must join the higher institutions must really be well trained in order to be able to make impact when they join. So support for early academics is really important. However, I want to ask questions around what type of support and how we manage support. By that, I mean the relationship between the organization or giving support, that I mean funder, and the early career academics that are applying for those support are also really important. Oftentimes, we see issues where the support sometimes fail or ignore the individual need of these researchers. So the idea is that everything that's the academics must do in terms of the research, in terms of the focus of the research and its outcome, is already pre-designed, predetermined. So most academics now have to find a way to fit into what the funders really want. So my question here is, how do we make sure that the type of support will not only benefits the institution ranking, because that is most of the time how institutions see support. For example, for postdoc, the institutions we want to support postdoc to help the institutions to produce, to increase research output. And the way most, I'm sorry to say, neoliberal universities see that is how it benefits ranking and the reputation of the university, which is important. So oftentimes this leads to some unrealistic expectations from postdoc in terms of the number of articles which they have to produce, and many early academic career are overwhelmed with workload, and in order to make sure that we make impact, we also need to look at how we support them to ensure quality at the same time. So that's one area I want to mention. Another area which I would like to touch quickly is when we say we need to align research to sustainable development goals and Africa Agenda 2026. This is really important, I think, because Africa in particular needs to address a number of systemic issues. One of it is the problem of inequalities, particularly in South Africa, and also poverty. But then I want to think, and I don't know if any of us also thinking along the same line with me, whether goals, SDG and African Agenda 2026 may or will not necessarily constrain, creativity, because we're talking about context here now. There are contextual issues in South Africa and other African countries that researcher may need to pay attention to. But if SDG and Africa Agenda 2026 becomes almost like it's a guideline, but becomes almost like something to strictly followed, then to become creative will be a challenge in conducting a relevant research that is good for our society as an Africans. So instead of making presentations, I'm just highlighting issues for discussions. So you may care to know that in 2012, I joined University of Pretoria as one of the Vice Chancellor postdoctoral fellow. That is exactly, the initiative of the University of Pretoria that changed my career. And one thing I would like to highlight is the mentoring or mentorship framework that really helped the early career academics or postdoc in 2012 when I joined the university. So the relationship between mentor and mentee also play an important role in supporting early career academics. So I mentioned to you about giving unrealistic expectations, criteria to postdoc and early career academic that needs training. And part of the training is academic integrity training. Part of the training is to learn how to think and learning how to write quality research that can be published in high-impact academic journals. And this takes time. I've heard somewhere where a postdoc was asked to produce, the language of industry, produce 5 academic journals or 10 academic journals in a year. That is unrealistic. I do not say this is happening. So what my mentor did was to ask me a number of questions. One of it is, what do you want to do? Yeah, that is different from what you did in your doctoral studies. I was introduced to the field of higher education. Part of mentorship journey was to also take me to different places, not only conference, but to be part of panels, meetings that will help my career. And University of Victoria has really got a number of sessions the Early Career Academy can, join from time to time that will help, that definitely helped in our research when I was still a postdoc. So my mentor did not see me as somebody that must produce something, but I think the way he addressed me, he looked at me as a project that needs to develop, need to learn something, and need to grow before I begin to, produce good academic, journals and other things. I think this is really, really important. I'm asking a question: how do we select a mentor for early career academics? So before I stop, inability to do all these things, and if we ignore them, we continue to increase problems around, predatory journals that is becoming prevalent now. I mean, because of unrealistic, expectations. So another thing is the institutional policy that de-emphasizing the local journals, and now telling early career academics to, because if you start your career in academics, you really need to start slowly, climb the ladder, learn before you begin to shine. So, and if you are told that local journal is not something that you need to focus on, but you need to look for international journal. What to start means, do we consider that when we design policy to support early career academics? So these are some of the challenges that I think many early career academics are probably facing now, and majority would like to ask that questions. If any support we are trying to give now, we actually take care of some of these issues. Otherwise, how do we measure the impact of support that we are giving to early career academics in the countries? I'm now a director for Center for the Advancement of Sustainable Education Future. Part of what we want to focus on in South Africa is this particular area where we want to assign funding to support early career academics who would like to join the center. Also, we welcome established researchers who are fundings and would like to spend some time at the center. So we look forward to collaborate. We look forward to partner with not just early career academics, but also established researchers in the field. So in conclusions, and as I've mentioned, my intention is not to present anything, but just to respond and to highlight especially the problems around supporting early career academics in the country. And I will summarize the whole thing by saying, how do we make sure that the support fits to the context, relevant to the society we live in, I mean South Africa? Are we not imposing rather than making sure that individual researchers succeed? Do we consider what they need or what we want them to do, or what we feel is the need of our society? How do we determine the needs? So these are some of I have so many questions in my head, but because of time, you could see that I'm rushing things. Thank you, colleagues, and I hope you have questions. If you have questions, then I will see if I can answer them. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Adeyemo. That was great, particularly those sorts of critical thoughts around who we support and how we support. And perhaps some of those questions you were raising, I'm waiting for the audience to have some questions or comments. But I'm wondering, Prof. Burton, if you want to tell us a little bit about the questions that Prof. Adeyemo was raising around unique support for unique situations in unique contexts. Is there something that the program is recognizing? I'm thinking of women having particular kinds of different, or as a subgroup, perhaps. Is there anything unique in the program, or is it a needs-based support program?
Well, the programs that I've told you about are essentially platforms which are enablers in that they provide information and they provide routes for early career academics to seek support. None of what I've spoken about is financial support. And I think that's an important point to make. Professor Adeyemo did mention at the beginning the fact that early career academics need money funding for their research programs. And of course, I appreciate that. But I think we start from a different sort of position with the programs that I was talking about now from USAF. There's absolutely no doubt that research funding is necessary. It's very difficult. I don't think there's anybody in the academic sector who would be saying at this stage that it's easy and straightforward. But I do think that in general, if universities have resources available, I know that their funding for early career researchers is a very common priority for universities to use their own resources. And of course, there is the University Capacity Development Grant, which does enable the building of capacity for early career researchers to some extent financially. But there's no doubt that finding funding for a particular research program is a huge challenge, and it's not isolated, and it's not unique to early career academics either. I think one or two other things that are worth commenting on. First of all, there is a very important aspect of being an early career researcher, which we try to raise awareness of all the time, and that is the fact that the workload needs to be balanced. There is a tendency we hear that there is a trend that newly appointed academics tend to be given quite heavy teaching loads. And of course, that's a constraint. It's a constraint on their capacity to develop their own research careers, to supervise and to actually learn the ropes. So it's an acknowledged problem. I think one which universities are becoming more aware of, and certainly one that they should be working against, because it just makes it very difficult if you have a huge teaching load. There's no doubt that is a problem. Things like having a route to a mentor can help a great deal with that. If you as a young, or one should not say young, as an early career academic, have the advice of a mentor. And here I want to differentiate between a mentor and a supervisor. A supervisor tends to be somebody who is in your field, an expert in that field, and therefore able to guide in a particularly focused technical way the work that is being done. A mentor need not be in your field, in your direct field. They are somebody who offers wisdom. And sometimes that wisdom is very helpful in dealing with those challenges. But a mentor can certainly guide and advise in terms of how to handle a heavy workload, for example. One other thing I wanted to just mention is, and the other linking to that, the other thing that Kola mentioned was the unrealistic expectations that might be imposed on an early career academic. Again, this is the kind of thing that should be highlighted, brought out into the open, discussed, and addressed rather than suffered through. I think these are areas where mentorship can really help a great deal. And then the other thing that I wanted to just mention was the issue of aligning with national and global agendas, such as the SDGs or the African agenda. You know, they do to some extent guide and constrain the direction that research might go in. But on the other hand, they do provide a shared agenda, a shared platform where you can find collaboration and where you can extend your work to a more transdisciplinary kind of approach. And in some ways, they are an opportunity rather than a threat. Having said that, I think let me stop there. There are a couple of questions in the chat which I see. So let me just take a look at that one. Restrictions on signing up as a mentor or mentee in TUSO Connect. It's not open to just anybody. It is open to people who are associated with South African universities. And if somebody applies, registers on the system who doesn't have an email address which is connected with one of our universities, then we take a look and we look a little further into their CV and their identity and so on. And in many cases, they are eligible. For example, somebody who's a retired professor can be a very useful mentor. So we just take a little look, a careful kind of look at what their background is before we involve them in the system, just if we don't know that they aren't already associated with the university. Yeah. So it's open to any academics, and it's also open to members of support and admin staff as well.
Prof, so that's about the mentor-mentee relationship. There was another question earlier on about doing anything online, synchronous training on writing. So that's the online. The online is usually the synchronous live, in the moment kind of feedback. Do you host any writing retreats from the program?
We don't at this stage. We haven't done any of the kind of academic interventions that universities are already offering at the moment, because we don't have the capacity in USAF to do that. But it's the kind of thing that we could be discussing, and it is the kind of thing where we can advise on how to go about those things. And there's quite a lot of resources in the TUSO resources database, which also might help. But we don't actively train. We're putting the platforms in place.
Prof, another quick question, and I know Prof Adeyemo, you put your camera off, but Prof Adeyemo was raising value-based research, that research is not done in a vacuum. And Kola, what I took from your presentation, particularly that the environment, the ecosystem of support is not always enabling. Do you want to both comment on the factors in the environment that you find perhaps are creating barriers to our emerging researchers?
The environment within institutions or in
the ecosystem, the wider ecosystem. I'm thinking about funding from the NRF. I'm thinking about particularly what Prof Kola was saying about the impactful journals with high impact, that we encourage to have single authorship and high impact journals, which is of course not always serving our context. And collaborative research is just so much richer in many ways, and yet there is a kind of a penalty in the system that disencourages that. If you can just comment on some of these factors.
My view is that is something which is to some extent fading. I think there's a lot of work in the literature at the moment, in the international literature, and it being communicated about how do we measure impact. There is a strong trend away from measuring impact factors of journals and citations as the only way to measure worth or value or status. And there's a lot of work being done and a lot of consideration going into how else do we measure impact, and consideration of, for example, collaboration networks, of the way in which research is extended into transdisciplinary areas and so on. And I think we're seeing a change. I don't think that very strong emphasis on the single author, the high citations, those kind of things, I think that that's changing. Just recently, the International Science Council put out an article on how to measure the impact of research, which addresses a number of those issues and says, you know, we need much better measures. So I think there is a trend towards that.
Thanks. Prof. Adeyemo?
Yes, I think for me is the top-down policy implementations that is, I think, is hindering many early career academics. You see, institutions, you know, I talked about unrealistic expectation. I think they both links when I mean talk about top-down policy implementations, where early career academics are seen as part, like a machine that must produce something. I think I find it problematic when we use industry language and then we are talking about quality, we're talking about making impact. So perhaps we need to rethink about the language we are using within the academic institutions. Maybe it will change the way we look at research, particularly for early career academics. You know, for senior people, they've made impact, and the young people, early career academics, they need to learn something. And what they need to learn is quality rather than quantity. But institutions want quantity for a number of reasons. They want to use it for ranking. So, and that informs the policy they make. So early career academics have no option because they are not permanent academic staff. So they would like to impress the university. So that also creates tensions on, they say I must produce, they say I must do this. So rather than what is the most important issue, for example, in higher educations, that is very more relevant within the South African society. So that creativity is, we are losing it. Yeah. We are also having problems with a situation where people are now looking to publish anywhere because policies say you must publish. Policies say you must look for international journals. So I think the relationship between early career academics and the institutions or organizations that are inviting them needs to be collegiate. By that, okay, thank you.
Can we just differentiate between postdocs and early career academics who are permanently appointed? Because not all early career academics are postdoctoral fellows.
Yeah.
There is a whole, we kind of loosely define early career academics as people who are newly in academic positions and fairly recently completed their PhD or a postdoc. And we hesitate to put an age limit on that because it's different in different parts of the world. But somebody who is relatively new in an academic career, not necessarily a postdoctoral fellow, I think that there is, as I said, a trend of moving away from that emphasis on the single high impact journal publications. And I have to say, I also am observing a move to a different kind of ranking in the universities. You may know that one or two universities around us have actually just walked away from the rankings. One of our leading liberal arts universities has just done that. But I think that the rankings themselves are changing. In fact, one of the most interesting rankings is the impact ranking, which takes into account the extent to which universities are having a broad socioeconomic impact, rather than only measuring citations and so on. So there is a trend away from a lot of these things, which can only be good.
So I want to conclude that because we're almost over time, and I really want to kind of hear both of yours emphasis on the importance of becoming collaborative, impactful universities rather than the best at anything or excelling doing the, you know, the ranking, the ranking system, which makes us very lonely, competitive university, elbow in culture rather than a collaborative university that sense is relevant to the people on the ground, or to everybody really, with relevant, impactful research. Thank you to both of you, and thank you, Prof. Burton and Prof. Adeyemo, for your informative contributions and for your thoughts. And for the rest, for the participants, thank you for making the time for being here, and we will share the resources with you. A great thank you, a special thank you to Michelle in the background, to Patrick in the background, and our next Engage is at the end of August, and information will come to you because, of course, you registered on the Helm USEF website. And we thank you very much, and we wish you a lovely. Thank you both.
Evaluation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Very good. Evaluation.
The evaluation link has been in the chat. Please, people, click on that quickly. It's a very quick evaluation, and it gives us a sense of how you feel about the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Birgit.
Thank you.
We really appreciate the information.
Bye, Maureen. Patrick, would you like to close the room, or should we see that people drop off slowly?
75 still on. Maybe we close the room.
I think we can close the room and we'll speak to each other afterwards.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.